Hey everybody, Omar here, and I am back with another knife discussion for you today. And today we're going to talk about knife smoothness. Now, in front of you, you see three different knives. Each of these three different knives have different smoothness. Now, for those of you that are new to the knife world, what do you mean by smoothness? What is smoothness? Well, let's talk about that for a second, because obviously when you purchase a knife really only does two things. It cuts and it opens and closes. So the latter is actually what today's subject is about. Hence, they call it the action of a knife. Now, every knife has different action. When we mean action, we mean the way it deploys, how fast you deploy. You can deploy a knife, and the quickness of being able to open and close a knife, and when you actually use the piece. Now, not all knives are the same, which is why I brought these three pieces out in front of me. Believe it or not, each of the three knives that you see in front of you are completely different in the way they are constructed. These two are KBT, what they call KBT ball bearing systems. They call it Kershaw Velocity Technology is what it's called, KBT. And this guy is a washer knife. Now, what's the difference? Now, the difference is both of these knives are constructed differently as far as how they open and close. As far as how they open and close. Now, there is inside this knife and in this one, there is two round discs on either side of the knife, as far as I understand it. And if I'm wrong, somebody make sure that they correct me when I talk about this, but this is how I understand it. Inside this knife, there are two discs inside the pivot with little round ball bearings inside. And that's what allows the knife to open and close very smoothly without any interruption. And it's called a ball bearing, or in this case, KBT ball bearing system. So the ball bearing system in both of these are what's called caged. In other words, the ball bearings are contained in a circular disc, and that's what keeps the knife opening nice and smoothly. Now, there is another system called IBKS. Basically, it's the same system, except that, as far as I understand it, the ball bearings are not contained. They're actually loose in that version of the system. And as far as I understand it, if you lose one of the ball bearings in an IKBS system, the knife will still open and close as if though it never missed the missing ball bearing. Now, the other system that they have is called a washer system, or in this case, it's just phosphor bronze washers. There's nothing in the knife. There are no ball bearings inside the knife. It's just basically metal rubbing up against special washers, in this case, phosphor bronze washers, that create the smoothness. Now, there's some controversy, in my opinion, as far as how the knife opens and deploys, and whether KVT is better than washer system, or actually, I guess the right word is, what's more impressive to you as a knife person? Now, for me, if a knife opens and closes very smoothly without ball bearings, that's pretty super smooth. That's pretty, in my opinion, that's pretty impressive. I would probably prefer that my knives to be more is less category than with the KBT ball bearing system, where they added something to make the knife smooth. Now, keep in mind, when you add something to a knife, it changes the mechanics of the knife. It may weigh a little bit differently. It may feel a little bit differently in your hand versus what's called a washer knife, which is just opening and closing on its own with two little round bronze washers. And if I hold up my Spartaco Swiss Bowie, you can actually see the two washers that are in there. You can see them, and that's all that's allowing this knife to open and close. So now back to the subject of smoothness. Now, smoothness is what they call the action of a knife, how quickly it opens and closes without interruption. In other words, there's no grit, there's no stopping in the middle of the opening and closing of the knife. And that's what people basically look for in a piece. Now, both of these are fantastic folders as far as the action. What's impressive about the Spyderco Switchblade is that it is not a KVT ball bearing system. It's simply just a washer knife. And the fact that it opens and closes is what makes it opens and closes so beautifully is what makes this knife such a mystery to people. Did they use special washers? To this day, I still don't know. Because I've had other phosphor bronze washer knives, and yet they did not feel like this. Which leads me to believe what causes a knife to feel differently. Well, it could be a lot of different factors. It could be the weight of the blade, which causes it to open and close, which contributes to the opening and the action of a knife. Because if a blade is too light, you might not get much feeling out of it or much action out of it, in my opinion. And sometimes they may even try experimental things with ball bearings just to see what they can do, such as the case with the Spyderco Mantra. Now, this knife, as far as I understand it, this knife has been re-released. They're still going to keep this version of the knife, but the knife has since been re-released in carbon fiber and an S30V steel. This year, Spyderco's actually released it, and it's called a Mantra 3. So let me get these two knives out of the way here. Now, this knife was designed by Eric Glesser, and it had one major flaw in the knife. It's an excellent knife. It's kind of reminiscent of the Spyderco Delica. Basically, it's a Delica on steroids, if you will. Now, this is a ball-bearing knife, same as this. But if you notice between these two knives, the size. Okay, so if you can imagine, the ball-bearing system in this knife is probably about the same size as the pivot you see here surrounding it. That's probably the same size as the KVT ball-bearing system. Now, imagine, look how small the pivot is on this. It's real small, which basically means they use incredibly tiny ball bearings in this knife. Now, the knife still has really good action. See, it's still got it. And it's also a flipper knife. But the problem is, when you're opening and closing this knife, you're losing something in the feeling of execution of opening it, simply because it does not have that flyaway feel that I get when I use my 0562 carbon fiber knife, which opens so beautifully. This one requires that I use a little more force to get it to do that, and to give it, and it's not really, I don't know how to explain it. It's not really a good feeling in my hand to open it. Basically, it feels like a weak washer knife. How's that? And plus the weight of the blade is very light as compared to the handle, so that causes the action not to be so great. Now you're saying to yourself, now why does that even matter? Well, because when you're opening and closing a knife, you want to be able to open it 100% at all times, not have this. See, that sometimes happens when the ball bearing system isn't that great. A lot of people that purchased this knife noticed that when they were using the flipper. They would get this action. And it's not a pleasurable feeling, because a lot of them had to find out, well, in order for me to actually open this knife, I'm going to have to either press down on the flipper part really well, or flick my wrist out when I do it, which a lot of people either may or may not like that, but that takes away from the experience of the knife. Or really educate yourself in using the knife with the Spidey hole. If many of you are not Spidey hole users, you may not like that. So Eric Glesser decided for 2018 to re-release this knife, make it a better flipper. He actually changed the angle of the flipper, and well, you'll see it, but he changed the angle of the flipper so the flipper opens much more easily than it does on the Mantra. And he also used regular size ball bearings, so now the knife will open in the same way that this one does. So now back to the subject of smoothness. Smoothness basically again, it means how does a knife open and close? And part of the experience of owning a high quality piece is that the knife opens and closes to your satisfaction. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Here's a Spyderco Mantra with the ball bearing system that they are now reconstructing. This one's the weak, has the weak ball bearing system in it. I guess you want to call it that. The knife opens, and what you want to do is you want to be able to close the knife without actually touching the blade. In other words, just use a little force, and that closes it. So that's part of the experience of a knife being smooth. Can I open and close it without touching the knife and just using very little force? See, in that case, it didn't work as good. I actually missed a little there. So that proves that the ball bearing system in here is kind of flawed, if you notice that, see? So you don't get that. Now, again, here we go with the Spyderco Switch Pro. Now, keep in mind, this is a ball bearing system, guys. This one is not. Now, watch this. This is just a washer system, right? Close it. Boom. Closes just like a ball bearing system. Okay, it closes just like a ball. That's what makes the knife so impressive. There's no ball bearing system inside here. It's just two washers on both sides of the knife, and yet you have that action. Now, the difference between these two knives, a ball bearing system and a washer system, is that with the washer system, you can actually control how smooth you like your knife to be. Basically, what you can do is you can loosen the pivot, tighten the pivot, make it super perfect, play around with it until you get the action that you expect. Now, there's good and bad in that, because if you're loosening and tightening the knife, keep in mind one thing that might come back is blade play. So you want to make sure that when you open it and you fiddle with your knives to get the action that you're looking for in a washer piece, that you don't overdo it and wind up with a lot of blade play. That's something that most knife people do not like to have in their pieces, is blade play. I'm certainly one of those guys that's not a fan of it, which made me love this knife so much, because I was able to tighten and loosen the pivot to my satisfaction. I never experienced any blade play, and I've had this knife now for going on 3 years now. So I picked it up in 2015. So the smoothness really just got to me. Now, there is different smoothnesses. Now, if you notice, when I open this knife and I close it, I actually have to jerk my hand a little bit to get it to fall. See that? So I had to do that. But guess what? With this knife, the ZT0562, excuse me, I don't have to do anything. Basically, the weight of the blade will just drop down into the handle. Boom. I didn't do anything. You didn't see me flick my wrist down or anything. That is what is the ultimate experience of having a perfect opening and closing action of a piece, if it can do that. Now, I actually have only one other knife that does that, and it actually isn't even the same. It's pretty close to the same. That's my 456 Blackwash by Dmitry Sinkovich. Has the same, boom, almost the same thing, but I did have to flick my wrist just a touch in order for it to do that. So, see, it's not the same. It's a little tighter, and I tried actually loosening it up. Now, keep in mind, this is also a ball bearing system knife, so it really depends on the piece that you get. But when a knife can open and close very smoothly, that's part of the experience of actually owning a piece, and that's what makes it really worth it when you have these pieces on you. That's part of the art of owning a knife, is that every knife you own, not only does it have a different look, it's got a different feel, it opens and closes differently. So when you go and you sell off a knife, there's a pretty good chance that you're never going to experience that feeling again with that knife, even if you got a different one. Because it's almost as if though once you open and close a knife and you fiddle with the pivot, now there's a little bit of your own personality in that piece. And you've now altered the way it feels, but you were able to alter it to your liking. So I guess the real controversy is, are ball bearings necessary in a knife? Do they enhance the knife feeling for a piece? could you live without it? Are you more impressed when a knife that it can open and close without the need for ball bearings? My own personal preference, yes. I'm much more impressed when a knife does not have ball bearings. Again, I'm into the less is more. You know, that's how I basically feel about it. Notwithstanding this knife, where the action is still a fantastic knife. It's that the action is livable. But of course, the knife buying public didn't want to shell out, you know, say 160 or 150 bucks for, or even up to $185 for a piece where the action was not as good. So they reconstructed it with the Mantra 3. So, but anyway, the whole concept is, what do you feel about the action and smoothness of a knife? How smooth do you like your knife? Are you more impressed when a knife does not have a ball bearing system in it? I want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you guys think about the ball bearing system versus a washer knife? What do you prefer? What impresses you more? Do you think that the smoothness is better on a ball bearing system because it's almost guaranteed with some pieces, as opposed to a washer knife where you can only do so much to loosen and tighten and oil it and do whatever you can to get the same exact effect as if it had ball bearings in it? I want to hear your thoughts on that. Please leave your comments and questions below. And definitely, that's one of the reasons why I made this particular video. I wanted to see if I could get you guys commenting more on my videos. I know my videos don't have a lot of flash to them at this moment, but I am going to work on that. I am working on trying to figure out how to put graphics in my videos. But in the meantime, I really want to hear from you. I think that these topics are important to talk about when we're purchasing our pieces. Just overall, what do you think about washer versus ball bearing system? Do you like this more? Do you like that more? Do you think this is a far better option because you don't want to have to worry about it? Because I kind of laughed about it, because I actually thought that for a while it seemed like if a knife has ball bearings in it, it's kind of like it's cheating. A knife that's on steroids, like in the Olympics, where, you know, you've got one guy on steroids and one guy's not on steroids. You know, it'd be like a whole crazy discussion. Are ball bearings actually cheating in the construction of a knife just to get it to open and close and do that? Or should knife makers, I don't know, maybe make more effort to have knives not have a ball bearing system in it and just have it open and close very smoothly? You know, I want to hear your thoughts on that. What do you guys think? Myself, I would prefer my knife not to have ball bearings in it, but the fact that some knives do have ball bearings in them, and I am a collector, I gotta have it. We all gotta have it. But it does impress me more when a knife does not have ball bearings in it, and it can do that. You know, as opposed to having ball bearings assist in that having ball bearing system assist in that opening and closing. So let me hear your thoughts on it. Again, I want to hear your thoughts. Please click subscribe on my channel, and please do comment if you like what you see. I hope to do more discussions like this, and I promise next video will be another knife review. But for today, I just wanted to get the topic of smoothness out in the open and hear your thoughts on what do you think about smoothness and what you require in a piece, and how important is it to you that a knife be smooth. Some people probably don't care. Myself, I got caught up in the whole thing. I care a lot. And by the way, in case you're asking, this is the smoothest knife that I actually own in my collection. I do not have another knife in my collection that falls anywhere near smooth as this. There is, however, one knife on the market. It is now discontinued. I believe it is the ZT Emerson 920 that does not have ball bearings in it, and it falls shut. I felt it. I held it in my hand. I couldn't believe it. It had zero blade play. I was totally surprised, and that's what got me into making this video. So I want to hear your comments and questions below. Please like and subscribe. I really hope to hear from you. I want to hear some comments. What do you think of this video? What is your opinion on knife smoothness? So this is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, signing off with another knife discussion. And by the way, my knife discussions will be a little bit longer than knife reviews because it is a discussion. So hope you guys don't mind that. In any case, this is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, signing off, hoping you will find happiness in your next piece of sharp art. Happy knife hunting, guys.